Morning, Russell.
Hello, all you hardcores out there. You know who it is. How are you doing, Julian?
I'm good, mate. What about yourself?
I'm all right, mate. What are you on with?
Oh, nothing interesting. Just come back off holidays, just load of washing, all that kind of thing. Rubbish, boring stuff.
Ruby and Reggie have got me wearing this for today.
It's all right, is that? Did I like the prime drink? Because they talked about it for a while, haven't
Oh, mate, it's every day, mate. Do you know what I'm going to do now? You know what I'm going to do? I've got some Robinsons in the fridge, and when I have them, I'm going to put it in the bottles.
they? Fill it back up, yeah. Honestly,
It's
I don't even
slowly
know that stuff. Yeah, it's not good for anybody, is it? My guys drink too much of these energy drinks, crackers.
Let's get down to business. It's hard to keep up with this. It's like a soap opera, isn't it? But we love boxing and we'll persevere.
Yep.
Eddie Hills, the Iceman from Billy Ricky, 6-0, 4 by way of. He's come out and he's said, and I quote, "We're number 2 now behind PBC." Well, Ring Magazine people, Michael Rosenthal and all them boys, editors at Ring Mag, they've got Eddie behind PBC, Arum, Golden Boy Bricktop. They've got Eddie as number 5 globally. Eddie says he's number 2. What do you make of that? Because Canelo's gone.
Yeah.
Joshua's shot to bits. White and Ben are parked up with issues we know of. What Katie Taylor's been beat. What do you say?
Well, they're definitely behind PBC.
Yeah.
We know that. I would place them behind Top Rank as well. Just for the depth of talent that Top Rank have got, all the way from the top down to the bottom. And they've got some fighters you can see coming through who's going to be future world champions. They've put on some great shows. The cards are really deep. I always
Is that your phone, Julian, or mine?
Not mine, mate. Definitely
Oh,
not.
go on, I can hear like a beeping. Go on, doesn't matter.
Nothing, mate.
Yeah, go on. Sorry, yeah, go on. Sorry.
And I think I always put. I don't follow it as closely as a Kent or a Terry would do in terms of the promotional outfits and who's with who. I always put Queensberry and Matchroom neck and neck at the moment. I think Matchroom were head and shoulders above them several years ago, but they've got the heavyweight kingpin. They've got a couple of heavyweights, coming through. I think they're jockeying neck and neck. I think DAZN, of course, are more global. But what we do know is we know DAZN aren't number 1. And ultimately, I think that's what matters to Eddie, if he was looking at global domination when he did the deal with DAZN. And I don't think it's a bit like meeting your childhood heroes. They say don't ever meet your heroes. And sometimes things just don't quite work out as rosy as you would think. And I think one of the things with Eddie, he's a shrewd guy, he's a sharp guy, but I think if he just thinks I've got DAZN's billions and I can just throw money and money and money at things, there's a hell of a lot more to it than just money. And I think one of the reasons why Matchroom are kind of sliding down that top 5 is because they're completely misreading the public's appetite for certain fights, and they're completely misreading the desire for clean boxing and a clean sport. And I think that's one of the big things that's stopping them moving up, really, because their arrogance knows no boundaries. I say this all the time. They're all arrogant. They're all powerful. Arum's as arrogant as hell, but he still puts on competitive fights, and he still puts on great cards. And there's just something unsavory about Matchroom right now. They're not. It's a bit like, I can't help it. I always go back to government, but as we know, the Conservative government, certainly the last 2 or 3 years, they've completely lost touch. You could argue they've never. I'm not saying Labour are much better, but you could argue they've never been in touch with the public. But the Conservatives have really lost touch. The things that Boris Johnson was doing, Partygate and all that kind of stuff, they've completely lost touch with the British public. And I think Matchroom have lost touch with the actual very people who put them in the position they're in, which is the fans.
Yeah. Let me just touch on something with Bob Arum, because I do give Bob Arum a bit of stick, but many years ago, I think about 5, 6 years, when Dennis's dad were obviously, they brought him home, didn't they, to die. He's on this bed that lifted up and that. he had telly in front of him. All Bucky's slips outside at bed. Dennis was sat there. Me and another kid. Is it Danny Toombs, boxer, wasn't he? And Bob Arum, he rung actually to see how Dennis's dad were. So he's not all bad, is he? Even though he's a ruthless businessman. And that Dennis, he ain't all bad, Bob Arum. But you know, so that's a nice touch in it. So there is a human side to people like that in there, and probably Eddie Hills as well. But as regards boxing, these people are pretty ruthless businessmen because they have to be, don't they?
Oh, they have to be, and they're dealing with big egos. They're dealing in a cesspit. You know, Bob Arum's got from law to boxing, and it's an absolute cesspit. We know it is, and you know, even the cleanest and most structured of all organisations have got elements of incompetence or corruption, whichever way you want to put it. But Arum, all right, you can't continue to hark back about what someone's done, but he continually puts on massive shows. But when you've promoted the likes of Ali and Leonard and Hagler and Hearns, don't talk to Bob Arum about boxing. Don't try and help. Oh, it's a new era now, Bob. It's a new era. Not what's never changed is that people like to see the best fighters fight each other, and they like great fights. That'll never change.
Yeah. Canelo, Eddie said they're still mates. He wishes him the best and all that. He's got nothing but praise for him. But when Kell Brook, who didn't have a deal with Eddie, wanted to work with another promoter abroad, he was disappointed and blah de blah, and there were a bit of back and forward, a bit of needle. It's not been the first time somebody's left. There was a bit of needle when Frampton went, and why would he be like that with Canelo when he's just signed a free fight deal with somebody else? Normally Eddie would be like sticking knife in money and exposing them for things that have gone on. Why is that?
He's always said, "Oh, I'm a pal with Canelo," and he's always said, "You know, I understand why he's gone to PBC. It's the best thing for him." But as you've just said, what we get with Eddie Hearn all the time is inconsistencies. So, for example, Josh Warrington, you know, he effectively punished Josh Warrington, even though it took him back. It was like, on my terms, the salaries weren't what they were. I'm going to park you up for a year. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to tell you who you're boxing. And he showed Josh Warrington who was the master, because, like you said, Eddie's all about loyalty. And how many times has him and Bellew said, if you're with us, you're with us. But if you're not, don't expect to come back, you know, and it to be the same and with open arms. And it's funny, isn't it? It's like I've always said to you, it's the analogy of boxers are my friends, Coogan and Eddie, unless they are journeymen with losing records, then they're not my friends. They're only my friends if they've got massive subscriber bases or massive, you know, the blue tick, etc. Then the boxers are my friends. And it's the same thing here. It's like, I'm all about loyalty if you're at a certain level. But if you're the biggest name in sport, or arguably the biggest name in sport, and I still think you've got a 2-fight deal, and in 12 months' time you might come back to me, and I can still do 2 massive events.
He's got a free fight deal, hasn't he?
Free fight deal, but he's still, Canelo, whatever we say, showing no signs of wanting to retire, is he? So Canelo might go for 3-4 more years, and Eddie will be still his friend. He'll still love him as long as the numbers are big. But if Canelo Alvarez, who's you know, failed as we know drug tests in the past, and Eddie's been really outspoken about that.
He's not now. He wanted to work with him. Don't worry.
That's what I'm saying. If Canelo Alvarez was Canelo Smith, and it was an 8-round, you know, chief support at the Royal Albert Hall or wherever, or you know, wherever, then it wouldn't give a toss about him. It's about money, and it's about ego. So first of all, I make a ton of money promoting Canelo. So I don't care what he's done, whether he's kicked me in the nuts and gone somewhere else. I don't care. I can still make a ton of money off him. Ultimately, I can still do that. And it's like Tyson Fury. Tyson Fury, out and out, thinks Eddie Hearn's a plonker, doesn't he? He thinks he's an absolute tosser. Tyson's always honest about that. He's probably everything Tyson Fury's not. But you watch in 2 or 3 years' time, if needed, those guys will work together because the money's big, the numbers are big. But as I've said, the likes of Josh Warrington and Kell Brook, it's like, well, you can come back, but things aren't quite going to be as they are, and you're definitely going to be the B side. Or
Because
you're
they're
not
on slide, aren't they?
Yeah, it's just selective, aren't they? They're selective in what they say to everybody about everything, and they're selective who's the pals. They're selective who they believe. I mean, isn't Canelo Alvarez disloyal? Isn't he a scumbag for leaving Eddie?
Well, I mean, Eddie said he only wants to go into bat for them who are team Matchroom, didn't he? Well,
Yeah,
Canelo's
exactly.
team BBC, team PBC, well, Eddie's hanging out the back of him.
Listen, Canelo Alvarez says wear pajamas, Eddie, at weighing. You wear pajamas at
They
weighing.
made him look a right mug with that, didn't they? And then didn't sign with him. That's what they think about him, isn't it?
That's exactly what they're thinking.
You know what I mean? I heard something over there. I'm not going to say who told me, but Eddie told this joke. Now, normally, I've been in this company a few times. When he tells a joke, because he's quite jokey and a bit of a piss taker,
Yeah,
but he's borders on bullying, especially about people's appearance.
definitely.
Or if they put weight on or not, or whatever, hair, anything, cheeky this, or not, when it comes out, we don't, you're a rascal coat that. Well, you told this joke, this is recently, and nobody laughed. Only him and Frank Smith, Spotty Frank. Nobody laughed, but there were a time I was told when everybody would have been laughing.
Everybody laughed.
And they weren't laughing. And I don't think he's he's funny anymore. And I think the cheeky chappy Essex thing, I think we've had 13 years of it now, haven't we? It's over a decade, and it's worn a bit thin, and people have sort of wised up, haven't they? Even people in industry. And I'm talking security that were laughing, some of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Big
Back in
guys,
the day.
big
Back
burly
in the day. But they don't laugh now. They laugh at him, not with him. There's a difference.
They'll still take his money, but they won't love him like they used to, will they? And I think you're right. I think everything's wearing thin, which is why he's really very selective about who he does interviews with now.
Well, you've seen them all this morning. We're now over 230 in a couple of weeks interviews, and it's not a lot. That it's not 10 a day for two people, Spotty Frank and Eddie Hills, Spotty and Hills. Say if they do 10 a day for 2 weeks, that's 280. So it's not hard graft. They're not working on the gate under the coal mines on the coal face, cutting into the coal, are they, like my granddad's? Are they, my father? Do you know what I mean? That's work, back-breaking work.
Graft.
When you're going home and you're getting dust out your eyes with Vaseline, and you've got scars on your back that look like tattoos, but it's coal dust in your skin. That's work. Did you not have them?
I'm a realist, mate. Exactly. My dad and my brother were miners. I work, senior management. I work hard. I apply myself. I'm honest and I'm fair. But that's not graft.
You're not working in black where you can't see 1 yard in front of you all day. All you're seeing is black.
You're in a seam like that.
Prison cell.
You're in a 14-inch seam, and 4 inch of that is water. And you've got some struts. I'm talking pre the strikes and the 70s when health and safety wasn't great. And you've got some wobbly wooden struts. And there were loads of mice out pit and rats and stuff because they used to feed them, and they all died after the strike, as you know. And you've got mice and you've got this and you've got that, and you're chipping away and you're crawling along like my dad with arthritis. That's graft, mate. That's mine. I don't ever say that what I do is graft compared to what my dad did and my brother did. It's not.
Do you know how many rats they found? Do you know when after the strike, because it was a year and a date strike, wasn't it? Do you know there were over 300,000 dead rats?
Won't surprise me because they stopped the miners used to feed them, didn't they? The miners would give them the rest of the snap and
bread and jam they used to take down pit, didn't they? Because it were a bit better tasting than ham and cheese, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not work, but they've gone into overdrive with these interviews now. I've never seen so many from them in my life. So they're saying it's because they're against drug testing and they want the best for the sport. Listen, since when have they given interviews to people with 1,000 subscribers and 2,000 subscribers? You can't get your foot in the door at that stage of your YouTube careers.
It's absolute. They're trying to drown out every single channel they can think of, not just the small waterways, but the pipes and the cracks and everything, just so they can get their way. I mean, in terms of the drug testing, we talk about this often, you and I, but if they can do 200 interviews and we can cover it 20 times, that's up to us, isn't it? But, it's like when Eddie's giving these narratives about, we're testing more fighters and that's why we're getting more positive tests and we're using the clean boxing program and clean boxing testing agency, etc. What they're not telling you is, like they said, this additional agency that they're using and pushing are not testing, like Frank Warren said last night. They're not testing for certain things, unbelievably things like growth hormone and that. So it's
what about what else he said? Where do them results go to first?
And that was, allegedly, those results go right to the promoter first, which is unheard of. So,
well, Eddie denied that in an interview because I've got it on here. It's on my favourites. Bricktop said they go to Matchroom. So where do they go, Eddie? Where are these tests going, and why are you using some inexperienced company that haven't been going long and also don't test for everything? Why would you use them in such a prolific fight? I don't get it, Julian.
And when you keep saying the narrative, but they use the same labs as VADA, that's like saying, well, there's 100 labs in VADA that test for 100 different substances, but they only test for 30, so they use the same 30 labs as VADA. So it's no use in their ornament, is it? It's a blunt tool, but it's a narrative, which is we are pushing testing and testing and testing. And you could allegedly reach a conclusion that if they're really pushing an agency that not many other boxing promotions are using, and then allegedly emails are going direct to them telling them who's passed and who's failed, you could argue that they might be selective about what they leak out into the public domain, couldn't you?
Well, if they're not testing for everything, it's bizarre. It's like me as a 15-year-old having a net at Bradford Park Avenue, where Yorkshire used to play, not Headingley, Bradford Park Avenue. And he don't mean to say I play for Yorkshire on a Sunday league, does it? Just because he had a net there as a 15-year-old. It's only the same, isn't it?
It's like having a you get a Formula One car ready, for it's the end of the season. It's the massive, biggest race there is. You're leveling the championship, Williams and Renault, whoever, and the one team does the whole testing, the whole preparation. Might be a bad analogy, and the other team, Renault, said, we'll check the brakes, we'll check the tires, but we're not going to check the engine. We're not going to check the struts, or we're not going to check this. What does it actually mean?
It means
you're not doing a thorough job. You're doing a cheap and nasty job. The testing you might have and the labs you might have for certain substances might be solid. But what's the point if you're not testing for some of the more stronger, widely used that are out there? Pointless.
Yeah. Jessica McCaskill, did you hear it on Thai Boxing?
It was a very controversial statement that she's come out with. But what this is doing now, right?
She's retracted it, though, hasn't she?
I think for me, I'm always honest about that. I think what she was inferring didn't hold water, right?
No, I
thought that. No, I'm not having that, Jessica McCaskill. I'm not having that. But what it's doing is it's just showing how dirty and corrupt the whole thing is, because we're not getting information presented to us, because we're not getting the facts, then people start to think certain things, and maybe this is happening, and maybe they haven't done that. And it's like the Conor Benn situation. I can't help but mention it, but we're not getting the full picture. And there's only one reasonable reason you can say. See, they don't want you to have the full picture. Never mind this legal obligation and this NDA, etc., etc. It's like when someone goes to court, you can get those court transcripts, can't you? And there's certain things are in the public domain. You're inside. People fight their court case, don't they? When they get sent down in America, you can get every piece of documentation, and people have appealed and won their own court cases because there's information out there in the public domain.
I have.
Exactly, you can get that. That's your Freedom of Information Act that you're allowed to. And why are we? Because there's no boxing without you or me or the fans out there or people who talk about it, love it, support it, pay for it. There's no boxing. Why can we not get clarity? Because this is what Frank Warren said last night, and I cannot keep talking about the Conor Benn situation, because one of the many things that frustrate me is Eddie Hearn has spun a narrative which said Conor Benn has done everything that's been asked of him. Now, you and I know that's absolutely not true. So this brings me on to Frank Warren, which he said last night in the interview there hasn't been a hearing with UCAD. Ben hasn't had a hearing with UCAD. So if you've done everything that we've asked you to do, Conor, apart from the one thing we need you to do, what's the point? So you're conning the public, and Eddie saying he's done everything he's been asked to do. It's an out-and-out lie, actually. It's not stretching the truth. It's an out-and-out lie. So if Frank Warren is lying, and there has been a hearing, you presented your evidence direct to UCAD, not to some independent person because you're appealing the suspension. If you have presented your hearing to UCAD, what would there be? There'd be an outcome, wouldn't there? There'd be a innocent or 2-year ban. There'd be an outcome. There's been no outcome direct from UCAD because you haven't presented your evidence and sat down in front of them direct with your team. And you're just telling lies. So what Eddie Hearn should do now is sue Frank Warren for what he said last night. If Frank Warren is lying, and there has been a hearing, put that out there and sue Frank Warren. But Eddie Hearn never sue Frank Warren.
He's suing Jake Paul, isn't he, Eddie Hearn?
Well, they're suing everybody, but they never do they? Because, yeah, the defamation he said about the judging, Conor was suing the Board of Control, UCAD, WBC, not long back. Potter, you're suing nobody. And Eddie's not going to sue Frank because of what Frank said, because Frank, you and I know, whatever you say about Frank, he's pretty good in the old court, is Frank. And
what is he, 47-3 or something?
Yeah, he's got a brilliant record, hasn't he, in court?
Even the ones he lost, he still won in his head.
So yeah, it was badly done. So what's the statement there about Frank Warren? The statement is Frank Warren doesn't say things unless they are true, or he's got a great foundation to say it because he's as shrewd as they come. So unlike Eddie, who just talks for the sake of talking, Frank says things and he throws those little things out there because he knows it's true.
He impressed me with that interview. I'll tell you another interview that impressed me as well. And I've seen it this morning, about 6 in the morning. Dean White, I've seen a few interviews from him. His talks very balanced, and he's been put in a really tough situation because he started off his promotional company and in Black Box Promotions. Right. And I haven't really got any beef with him. I don't like people going around saying that. I have a thing in my head about people say, "Oh yeah, he's my cousin, he's my brother." He just says you, mate. That's a pet hate of mine. Well, then he's using the geezer's family name and all that, and that's the only issue I have with him. That and the aeroplane carry-on. You know, where he saved 400 people on a plane. A lot of rubbish. Yeah. Other than that, he's doing his bit in boxing now. He wants to get on map with his company, and I can understand how hard that is to do. That's hard. Even Spencer Fearon started that Hard Knocks. It's an hard slog. It's hard. And if you're not getting no help, it's a nightmare. It's not like Dennis, 40, 50 million tucked away. Do you know what I mean? It's pretty easy for them sort of people, isn't it? But look, he's been put in a situation where they fell out, him and Dylan, whatever way they've gone. Wardley and Adelaide are going to fight on TNT Sports, aren't they? There's bad blood, there's lawyers going on behind the scenes, people getting blocked on WhatsApp left, right, and centre. He's there now thinking, well, having black box management and Dylan's fell out with all these, he's got to move forward. And he just nailed it on Eddie. Said, look, I'm not getting involved in all like that. I've just got to concentrate on what I'm doing. And I think that's good. But for years, he's gone into bat for Dylan, hasn't he? Basically, hasn't he? Behind the scenes.
Yeah, and like I say, some things.
And he's been dealt a wrong. He's been dealt a bad hand, Dylan, because he hasn't got a good track record with performance enhancing drugs. Always looking for an edge in here, but he's not been given due process like Conor Benn, has he? And that's his argument.
Dillian White's just absolutely blown out the water and left
Thrown
the
to Wolves, hasn't he? Yeah, exactly. But if he were 23, they wouldn't have done that to him, would they?
No, and that's exactly it. They're selective about who they work with. They're selective about what they think about, say about people.
Let me just sign for this. 2 seconds. 2 seconds.
No worries. And they're also, I'll carry on talking. You know I can do that, mate. And they're also very selective about who's a drugs cheat and who's not. Who deserves due process? Who doesn't deserve due process? Who will support and who will sponsor and who will back and who we won't. And this is Matchroom. This is what they do. And that's the narrative.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all right, mate. I carried on talking, mate. I was just going to say this is selective Matchroom. This is what they do.
Kevin's yearling book for island sales. Who gives a shit about horse milk? I don't.
Do you know what
Yeah,
I
go on.
found? Do you know what I found at the week last couple of weekends ago before we were packing to go on holiday?
What?
I forgot someone had bought me, and an ex-boxer, a boxer I used to train, he's a nice kid. Him and his dad bought me Eddie Hearn Relentless for one Christmas, and I've got Eddie Hearn's book upstairs, mate. I've not read a page of it, by the way. So if you want it, Russell, if you want me to send it on to you,
Relentless.
Relentless.
I'll come and get that next week when we go training, yeah?
Yeah, if you want to know what it's like to have everything against you and be like so tenacious that you never give in, you'll never give in, and you're driven and you can battle on, read Eddie's book, Relentless.
Were he on free school dinners at school?
Free school dinners. He used to do his PE in his underpants and vest.
Walk
like
2 miles to school and walk 2 miles back.
Yep, the whole lot.
With holes in his trainers.
Yep, absolutely. I remember the miners' strike, mate. I remember what it was like for us. But yeah, so poor Eddie. So if you want to learn, mate, read that book. You become
Relentless.
successful.
But yeah, you were saying, Julian.
No, I was just going to say this is just Matchroom being selective and avoiding everything, and just now Eddie's was leaking in something I saw him say yesterday about the defence wasn't based on due restriction, why the rule it was overturned, and he inferred it was based on the second argument that they've got, which is how Conor Benn, his body's clung onto clomiphene. I mean, how it got there. They're saying the amount of trace that they found wasn't enough for it to be part of performance enhancing drugs. It was more likely to be related to food because of the trace amounts, etc., etc., etc. But Eddie was inferring that, but not saying that. And this is what Eddie does. Eddie just infers anything. And then if you pushed him on it, say, but I'm not allowed to say, which is the kind of crux of the point we were talking about 10 minutes ago. I'm not allowed to say because, that's a breach of confidentiality. It's funny how you can be really, really transparent when everything goes your way and you're happy to talk about facts. But when things aren't going your way, you've got to be, well, I can't talk about that. Yeah.
There's that.
It's the whole thing. Like I saw the kind of the lovers little thing that I did with Parsons, mentioning
Nicholas Parsons.
Oh, him and Nicholas Parsons. I did it a couple of days ago, and they said, "Have you got something about what do you think about the border controls? The fact that they're appealing this decision, UKAD and the British Boxing Border Control." And Eddie said something like, "No comment." And basically, he was trying to be clever because Eddie says, "That's the first time I've ever heard you say no comment." I said, "Well, you don't really want to hear what I want to say about that."
He didn't think you were going to get asked that. That's because we've been putting it on these little gimps, haven't we?
And he's basically
little goonies.
They're just avoiding it. And do you know what? Must be one of the worst. Talk about backing the wrong horse. But you and I said so long ago, the problem they've got now is they've dug this hole so deep. Yeah. They've told so many lies. They can't come clean now. It's an impossible situation to do a U-turn and say, it wasn't his system. We've been a little bit lax with the food prep, in spite of everything that we've said previously about being, like every morsel that touches his mouth is measured. We've been a bit lax. We've had a few meals abroad. Can't quite remember where we ate. Can't quite remember what restaurants we ate in. All that kind of stuff. And we might have got something from the camp we did in Portugal for 4 weeks or 8 weeks. And it might have been traced back from there. And his system doesn't digest it like everybody else's and blah, 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 blah. But they haven't. So Conor Benn's gone from nothing in my system. Remember, right at the beginning, nothing in my system. Contamination, dirty labs, vendetta. There's a vendetta against me. There's an agenda against me. My dad was right to give up his license. He's gone from that to now he's gone from, I agree with the WBC's decision to clear me, but I don't agree with the WBC's reason, which was consumption of eggs. So dismiss it completely. 270-page document, and I'm going chronological, 270-page document, which argues all the things about contamination, blah, blah, blah. Thrown out, that was gone, tear it up. Now to this new team was actually his consumption of eggs. Yeah, I've probably had some dodgy eggs somewhere. And I'll just say, Russell, you always give me this sort of forum. Just for the last time, right? You receipt everything. If you are a professional, elite, so-called elite boxer, you receipt everything, every expense, because no one puts their hand in the pocket at a restaurant and says, this meal we've just had, Conor, while we're in camp, I'm going to pay for it. 200 euros, there you go, I'll get this. No one does that. The tight so-and-so's in boxing, they expense everything and it comes out of the fighter's purse, everything. So
promoter pays for it.
Yeah, so you go for 4 weeks, Portugal, wherever, because they're not saying it, but they're kind of inferring that they might have eaten this abroad while they're in a camp. I've had 4 weeks in Portugal, right? There's 2 sources of food. There's the stuff that your nutritionist buys. He'll have receipts. I always talk about this because no one mentioned it. He'll have receipts. Those receipts will have a chain of custody. And then there's where you eat out. And again, you'll have receipts. These meals for these teams, we're not talking eating in some kind of crap hole. We're talking about they eat well, they eat.
They have a chef, don't they? They buy stuff from a supermarket.
So we either do our shopping or we eat out. And all you have to do is you have to trace back. That's where we had our shopping. We went out 3 times, 4 times during that camp and we ate there. You trace back, you ask them where they get their eggs from, you test those eggs. Because no one, even if they're not allowed to use clomiphene for fertility farming, will do that. They'll just say we don't use it. You test the eggs. And then if there's clomiphene in the eggs that you ate at this particular restaurant, you can say, look, we've got receipts there. We've done the egg testing, because you might as well, because you've had the best scientists. So you think about that. I always go on about this, but you've got the dream team and the best scientists money can buy. But your scientists haven't tested the food you've been eating from the source where you've been eating.
And the dream team you've got can't even pull receipts up from where you got the eggs from, pop, pop, bang.
Yeah. Easiest thing in the world, even if you don't have a receipt. We all use these phones now, don't we? We all buy our phones on Apple Pay or on our wallets or whatever, and we have a receipt what says this is where I ate, and then they can get a backup receipt because all that data is caught. All data warehouses, all restaurants have a data warehouse. It gets backed up. That's where we ate. That's what you ate. You ate some eggs. Where'd you buy your eggs from? We buy them from so and so. Right, let's buy some. Let's test them. And I'm repeating the point because it's so easy. It's like the hair follicle test, Eddie and Conor. What Canelo did. It's so easy. A single hair follicle test. Okay, not the implants you've had, but the actual real hair follicles you've got on your body. A single hair follicle test can prove if there's been long-term ped use on an athlete. It can go for 12 months. They can tell in the labs for 12 months.
That's what they did to Rio Ferdinand, didn't they?
You just prove. I'd be desperate to prove my innocence if I've been accused of something.
They're hiding something.
Well, they're hiding. We know what they're hiding, don't we?
They're hiding something.
We also know that clomiphene was hiding something, don't we?
Yeah. Well, clomiphene it's a masking agent, isn't it?
Yeah, clomiphene on its own, it is what it is. But it comes after something, doesn't it? And we know what they've been doing. We know what they've been doing. And they can't prove they haven't, and I can't prove they have. So you have to go with a reasonable assumption.
They're hoping for a stalemate like Fury and UCAD, aren't they? Tyson Fury, that's what they're
be interesting to see if he fights this year.
Yeah. Before we go, we spoke about the Jessica McCaskill thing. Alicia Baumgardner, Bricktop said she was signing with Jake Paul, wasn't she?
Yeah, and that's interesting. Did she have a 4-fight deal with Matchroom? It was 3-4 fights or something.
I think she'd seen her do that work. Well, that the last fight and she didn't want to sign or something. It's all shrouded in mystery, but I'm sure she signed a deal, multi-fight deal, January 2022. And what that one in July, the last fight of the deal, and she weren't re-signing. And now all of a sudden she's popped from some low-level company, and it looks like, according to Bricktop, Matchroom had the results before anybody. It was delayed 9 days, so they got the last fight out, didn't they? They all got paid.
Yeah.
And then they're saying they made it public 10th of August, but it didn't come on boxing scene till 16th, did it? So
I guess the question is then, I don't, because we know VADA's rules, or we're learning about VADA, we're learning about UCAD. So this third agency, this clean boxing agency, we don't know the rules in terms of what has to become public knowledge or what doesn't have to become public knowledge. But it's an interesting allegation that Matchroom were the ones who were presented with this evidence. So would anybody else be presented with this? Would her opponent have been given this information? Would her opponent's trainer?
Would Oscar Rivers have known if Thomas Hauser didn't put the story out about Dylan White, because that would have been kept quiet? If the Conor Benn thing didn't come out, would we have found out? No, they'd have gone ahead with it, wouldn't they? So how many more fights have they gone ahead with?
So how many
they have got away with it?
Yeah, how many people on your books are either are doing silent bans, or they've had findings that we've not heard about? And do you know what? We wouldn't even be talking about this if, going back to the original point, if we had transparency, we wouldn't be making these comments, because we'd have transparency. You banter rights, strict liability, 2-year ban. But because they're swerving and swerving and swerving, it's like, why? Why did it take so long for Conor not to sit down with you, Cad, because he really hasn't done, but why, or the border control, but why did it take so long to at least say that's what I'm going to do? Why? Sit down straight away and say, right, look, this is the situation. Show me the findings. Give me a little bit of time to try and gather some information, more than anything about where it's come from. Sit down with a nutritionalist. I'll sit down with someone from legal, from Matchroom Legal. I'll sit down with my S&C coach. I need to understand a little bit more about these supplements that I've been given and about my diet. But no, it's smoke and mirrors. And we keep getting to the same point, because we know why. We know why, because the performances of Conor Benn have become the most meteoric improvements we've ever seen in a boxer. We've never seen improvements from a kid who was slapping in 4-rounders and struggling with journeyman to a kid who's icing former world champions in pretty short window of time. And people say, it was only 4 or 5 years, 6 years pro. That's not short. That's a short window of time when you're a pro. It takes a long time to get from that level. And generally, they've got good pedigree as well. The one thing I'd be interested in, and I don't know the answer to this, by the way, I'd be interested in Conor Benn's record as an amateur in terms of his knockouts. I know he boxed at a pretty lowish level in Australia, but I wonder if, as an amateur, he was showing such power that he started to show as a professional halfway through his career.
Well, we're going to see, aren't we? When he comes back, because they'll be on him for testing, and he might not have his Superman cape on when he comes back.
Yeah. And do you know what? Again, just as a coach, clearly he's a talented fighter. His technique has improved. It'd be silly to say it hasn't. His technique has improved. But I see the odd thing keeps coming up, doesn't it? Showing him on the bag. He's always doing the same combinations on the bag. But there's just something not loose about Conor Benn when I watch him. He just relies on that power and those wide feet. And I just think, you know what?
Like his dad.
Yeah.
It's a carbon copy of his dad. No jab, all right hand.
No jab, but I think his dad was a lot more explosive and just had a bit more, you know, it was a good level ABA champion.
Bit more hungrier, wasn't it?
Yeah, but definitely hungrier and definitely more. Well, he hasn't had it easy, Nigel had it himself as a youngster. There's just something about Conor Benn where it's not wishful thinking. I look at Virgil Ortiz. I always mention Virgil Ortiz.
Got 1 minute left, Julian. Go on.
Yeah, I can't mention Spence and Crawford because of 300 levels above him. But I just don't think he's that great, mate. It's as simple as that. And how poor, back to the original sort of genesis of this thread, was how desperate a Matchroom, which you were saying now, if that's who I've got a tired and troubled AJ, and I've got a guy who I can't get a fight because he's popped twice. How desperate am I if I'm trying to really drum? What about all these other kids you've got? You've got some good kids in Matchroom in the UK. Why don't you build them up and just forget Conor Benn and just, you know, step to one side, because he's made you look really bad, Eddie. And that's me done.
Right. Listen, thanks for coming on. You've been a gentleman. Have a great weekend.
Speak soon, Russell. Take care.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Everybody have a great weekend. I've got Andy coming on later from Aberdeen. Hop, hop, bang. Keep the pressure on. Be sacro.